All right, so welcome everybody to Outlaws to Advocates. We've actually been on break for a couple of weeks, but we're coming in today for a really special podcast with State Senator Analise Ortiz, who, for those of you who don't know, is extremely involved in a multitude of things, but in the areas that we get to see her is in the reentry space and reforming corrections and just all around rock star in this field. I don't want to give too much away. That's why we have Miss Ortiz here, or Senator Ortiz here, to share that journey with us. But with that being said, Mr. Senator Ortiz, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
That's awesome. We're definitely excited to have you. So my name is George Nolan. Okay, I work over at New Freedom. I'm the director of marketing, and at the end of the day, I'm a peer support and a recovery advocate. Right, I work for a company, but my calling is to this field. I spent 17 years incarcerated, and if I'm able to help anybody avoid a path like that moving forward, or anybody with a desire to get better, that's why I do what I do. Jesse, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Senator Ortiz. Thank you again for coming on. So my name is Jesse Messer. I too have formerly incarcerated, 17 years in prison. I currently work at New Freedom. I teach peer support certification, basically empowering leaders to go out and combat this problem that a lot of families are dealing with right now. And I'm also a recovery and reentry advocate, and I've dedicated my life to service. Jeremy?
Thank you, Jesse. My name is Jeremy Shaw. I'm Director of Justice Integration at Sanctuary Recovery Centers. Like George and Jesse both, at the heart of who we are as reentry advocates, we want to do anything to prevent individuals going and becoming incarcerated. So, I believe that community engagement and programs on the front end can help reduce what has happened to our communities. So I'm thankful to be here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with all of you.
Awesome. So we introduced ourselves. Would you like to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Analise Ortiz. I have the incredible honor of serving the people of Maryvale, which is a community in West Phoenix, and the people of South Glendale in the Arizona State Senate. I previously served one term in the Arizona House of Representatives, and I was really brought to this work from a variety of ways, but I was born and raised here in Arizona and always recognized this huge injustice that existed in this state, especially when it came to the way that Sheriff Joe Arpaio targeted and harassed our Latino community. And I went to school to be a journalist because I really wanted to shine light on these injustices. And as a student reporter, one of my first assignments, I was sent here to the Capitol and to report on the issues. And that is when the light bulb kind of went off in my head, that the reasons why we had poorly funded public schools and an incarceration system that was out of control and that wasn't truly rehabilitating people was because of deliberate choices that were made by politicians. So ultimately, I decided to leave my journalism career because I wanted to get more involved in politics. And I started working at the ACLU of Arizona on a campaign called Smart Justice, where we were aiming to reduce the state prison population and combat racial disparities in the justice system. Through that work, I was really using my communications and journalism background to train people on how to give testimony here at the state capitol. And many of those people were folks who had been locked up in the Arizona Department of Corrections. So it was so crucial to really hear their stories, but work with them to empower them to tell their stories for themselves in a way that really calls others to action. And I saw just how powerful that is, especially when you have politicians who have no idea what goes on in the state prisons, yet we're managing the $1 billion Department of Corrections budget. And we're passing laws that keep people in prison for longer periods of time than they would be if they committed the exact same crime in a different state. So it's so crucial to me, this issue of criminal justice reform and reentry, but also making sure that those who have lived experience are the ones that are really leading the conversation and leading the policy changes that need to happen to improve things here in Arizona.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your point of view, your perspective, it's refreshing. It really is refreshing to be able to say the things that be able to hear the things that you're saying. Like it doesn't get said enough, and so much stuff gets discounted. And there's such a tremendous room for growth in this area, and so much change that does need to happen. To have someone in a political position like yourself be aware of this stuff, talk about this stuff, show up at lived experience events and voice your support and have conversations. That's how we met. And it's so awesome. And it's such an honor, honestly, to have you here. I know Jesse had something he was looking to ask you.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Senator Ortiz. Like George said, it's really great hearing how much you value the lived experience and what we can bring to the table as far as justice reform. One of the questions that I had for you was, born and raised in Maryville, how has your childhood shaped your vision for the community that you serve, growing up in that community?
Yeah, well, I actually didn't grow up in Maryvale. I did grow up here in Maricopa County, though. Okay. And like I said, Arizona has long been such a hostile state to Latinos in particular. If you look back at the legacy of Joe Arpaio, I grew up in a very Catholic family. And I remember my parents talking to me about how Joe Arpaio's deputies were waiting outside Catholic churches on First Communion dates, which is a very sacred day for people that practice Catholicism, because they knew that there would be a lot of Latino families there, and they were basically trying to racially profile and find people that maybe did not have documentation to target them. And I remember as a kid being horrified by that idea. And the other issue that really resonated with me as a child was public education. So Arizona is one of the worst states in the nation when it comes to how little we fund our schools. And that has a direct correlation, if you ask me, with our high prison population, right? It's very clear that we are not valuing raising kids in a way that is going to set them up on a pathway for success. Yet the minute that they have an issue or a hardship, we try to find a way to throw the book at them for the longest period of time. It's really backwards, the way we do things here. And my parents are both educators. So my dad is a community college professor. My mom is a pre-K assistant in the public schools. And I saw throughout my childhood how our public schools were underfunded, how that impacted my family, but also my peers in my classrooms and my teachers who I loved so dearly. And so I think those two issues, both over-policing and racial profiling, along with the intentional divestment from our public schools, really shaped my understanding of the world as a young person, as a young woman of color growing up in Arizona, to really see, our state has its priorities backwards.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on this, because it was 2020 when I was sitting in prison and I was looking at my TV and I seen that the budgets, right? They had them both posted, and our incarceration budget, when you compare that to by how many facilities and how many schools we have, and you understand, like it's like really easily to understand, because if you have less money going into education, ideally without having the proper education and teacher pay in place, it subjects our youth, right, to eventually be groomed right into this incarceral system. And, with the state budget, I think it was 1.2 billion, and they were asking for an additional 100 million at the time. And the state's budget for education was like 800 million. I was like, man, there's something that needs to be done. So this has been going on for years.
We fund our prisons at a higher rate than our higher education system. And it's like when the other way that children are impacted is when their parents are incarcerated, which is the topic of an event that we met at, about the way that when you take a parent out of a home away from their children, how that impacts the child's development and could potentially lead to cycles of incarceration and family trauma within one family. And so definitely finding ways that we can not just reduce our prison population and reduce the number of people that are impacted by the system, but also finding ways that we strengthen that bond between a parent and a child who are impacted by incarceration is also something that I feel very passionately about. And I hope we can make some progress on that here at the legislature, but also on the local level.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was talking to Amber Watkins. I can't remember. She got Amber Marshall now, actually. And she was talking about the stuff that they were going to be possibly implementing over at Perryville to kind of move that ball forward with family reunification and that during incarceration. And she said some really exciting stuff. So hopefully that comes to fruition. I know they got a pretty great director over there right now, so hopefully it will. As far as housing goes here in Arizona, you've done some pretty important work with that already, right?
Yes, housing is one of my top issues that I care about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with the stuff that you've already done, right? The achievements you've already had, because you gained a lot of ground with that, correct?
Yeah, so we have a huge issue with affordable housing here in Arizona, both with, the cost of rent being so high, which is something that I've been impacted by moving from apartment to apartment as my rent has been raised. But also it's very hard for people, especially young people, to become homeowners. We do have a housing shortage in Arizona, and we have corporations that are purchasing single family homes and only renting them out. So you get this perfect storm of a housing crisis. And so some of the things we've been able to do here at the legislature, I played a key role during my first term in 2023 to invest a historic amount of money in affordable housing and homelessness prevention. The other bills we were able to get done had to do with in-law suites, as some people might know them, which were outlawed in a lot of Arizona cities, if you can imagine that. And when you think about, let's think about a person who's coming home from prison, right? They might have a very hard time finding a place to live, an apartment that's going to accept them with their record. And if they have a family member who has a big plot of land and wants to go ahead and build a small accessory dwelling unit in the backyard, they should be able to do that. The government shouldn't be coming in to say, no, you can't build that on your own property. And then you have this person who would have otherwise had a affordable or maybe even free place to live right out of prison, who now has nowhere to go. So that backyard casita bill and being able to legalize those was a really big deal. And there's still a lot more that I want to continue to work on. For example, I hear from a lot of folks that have records who tell me that they go to apply for an apartment. The apartment says, yeah, we accept people with a criminal record. Go ahead and apply. They pay the $150 application fee. And then the apartment comes back and says, just kidding, we actually don't accept people with a criminal record. And the person says, well, can I have my $150 application fee back? And they say no. So that is just blatant, extortion. It's taking advantage of people that are already in a vulnerable situation. And we have the ability here at the legislature to pass laws that ban that practice. We can pass laws to cap how much an application fee is, or to say that an apartment must be upfront with people about who they do and do not accept. So those are the types of policies that I really want to continue to work on to reduce barriers, especially for folks that have a record, to help them, have those basic needs that they need to be able to survive and to be successful when they come home.
Absolutely. It's super important, and everything kind of happens for a reason. I did a post on LinkedIn and I talked about the value of while you're in prison. It was yesterday or today, and working for 45 cents an hour. I didn't really think anything of it. I just put the post up with a little picture of a guy walking out of prison. And like 80 people have commented. And something I noticed in the comments is the people that have a huge problem with the people working in prison for 45 cents an hour are the same people who are currently working at companies that won't hire these people who come out of prison. So they're saying it's like, don't treat them like that in prison, but no, they can't come. And I don't know if they're decision makers or not, but it was an interesting correlation there. And we talk about different policies or even taking advantage of people. Oh yeah, we'll accept the felony, give me the $50 or $100 for the application fee and not doing it. That's a very small sliver of what that pie looks like. That happens all over in all kinds of different areas, you know, even through employment. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm really glad that that's something that's on your agenda.
Yeah. And job opportunities is another huge issue. You know, I think there's so many people that come home that are just would make incredible employees, but then they're locked out of many opportunities. And that's wrong, especially when you look at things like the firefighters who are working inside to save lives and then have trouble on the outside. So we need to do a better job. And we can do that from both the public and private side, right, of educating employers and maybe giving incentives to employers that are willing to do that second chance hiring. And then also coordinating more job fairs and things of that nature, which I know is going on in our community and that many of you have been part of. And so I love to see that kind of stuff and making sure my constituents know about those events and those opportunities.
Absolutely. Well, now that you've been on Outlaws to Advocates, your constituents will know about everything. It's all out there.
It's all out there.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
You highlighted some of the criminal justice and immigration reform and in some of those childhood experiences and how they shaped your work with the ACLU. During your time at the ACLU, you championed criminal justice and immigration reform. What specific reforms are you most passionate about pursuing as a state senator?
Yeah, so one of the projects that we worked on at ACLU that was such a challenge was sentencing reform. So as many of you might know, here in Arizona, we have a truth in sentencing law that dates back to the 90s. And it's incredibly hard to get any type of earned release credits. And when you do get those earned release credits, it's very limited, right, in terms of how much time you can shave off your sentence. And we know that that is a huge barrier to people being able to have good programming inside or incentives inside to really help them on their path of rehabilitation and recovery. So we had been trying really hard to get some solid earned release credit legislation passed. And unfortunately, that was one thing we were not able to do. We did extend some of the programs that are already in place, like the 90 days to release, where you can enter a rehabilitative program, come home a little bit earlier. And those are all positive steps, right? But I would really like to see us pass more meaningful earned release credit legislation. Some other things are related to clemency release. So we know that there are people, medical clemency in particular, there are people inside that are serving very, very long sentences. They are aging very rapidly. And with that comes all kinds of health conditions. And many of those folks, some of them are on their deathbed, who want to and should be able to come home to live out their final days with their families. And it's so challenging here in Arizona for them to be able to have that early release to come home and to, die in a peaceful way. And we should absolutely look at giving people more of a pathway to medical clemency, because it's already so tragic when someone's entire life has been spent behind bars, more or less, and then in their final days, they're not able to be surrounded by their loved ones. We really need to reconsider that as a state, especially when you know that these folks are not a harm to themselves or to society, that they made some mistakes in their past, but that they are still human beings worthy of dignity and worthy of leaving this earth in a dignified, peaceful way. So we introduced a bill on that last year. It did not receive a hearing, but we are going to try for that again this upcoming year.
Analise Ortiz, I got to say, you just been officially jumped into our Outlaws to Advocates gang.
Thank you. I will wear that proudly.
We'll have to get you out a hat and a t-shirt here soon.
Thank you. No,
Yeah,
I
for
mean, you
sure.
all are the ones doing the real work, and we aren't able to really get these bills done without folks like you advocating and talking to people you know about what happens here at the state capitol. So I really appreciate this podcast, the work you do, and I really hope that we can continue to do events together and things like that, because the more we grow this movement, the more success we're going to have.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Go ahead, George.
It's super exciting because
Yeah.
I think that we told you at the
Really
last
is.
event, the Assistant Secretary of Labor came on here, James Rodriguez. He deals specifically with the veteran side of things. We've had a retired police officer, Tommy Thompson. We've had an author. It's not, we're reentry based, right? We're focused in this space, but the amount of buy-in we're getting from everyone in the community, including yourself, is just, man, it feels really good. So thank you for supporting us. We could not do the stuff that we do without your support. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I got something for you, Senator Ortiz. This is something that's kind of relevant to me. What would you say to those who feel disconnected from politics and how they can get involved to make a difference, possibly being felons, young people, people that have just basically given up on the criminal justice system and politicians, and just feel like their vote doesn't matter, or them getting involved doesn't matter, and their voice doesn't matter? I mean, what would you say to somebody that potentially has that attitude?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is like, I get it, right? Like, I understand. Like, that is part of the reason why I ran for office, is because I was so frustrated by politicians that say one thing, do another, forget who they work for. And I think it's really important to remember that we do have power. And if we didn't have power, they wouldn't try so hard to take our rights away, to take away our right to vote, to make it hard when you're someone with a record to get your right to vote back, right? These barriers are intentional. And if we just stop fighting, who knows what's going to happen to our country? Who knows if we'll even have a country or a democracy? And so what motivates me, because I have those days too, right? I work here at the Capitol where there is 90 of us legislators. I am in the minority party. It's really hard to get things done. You're talking about policy that both sides can agree on, and you hear one person say, I don't like that because it'll be a win for Republicans. And then another person says, I don't like that because it'll be a win for Democrats. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a win for people. Like, we need to leave the politics side out of it. And so I have those hard days, and what motivates me are my nieces and my nephew. They are growing up in a world where we are going down a scary path. Here in Arizona, we're running out of water. We have climate concerns we need to worry about. We have over-incarceration concerns we need to worry about, and how that's draining our state budget. And they deserve better, right? They deserve adults who are going to act like adults and show up and fight for them. And so I would encourage people to recognize that you have power in your voice, and that the politicians in this building are scared of that power. And number two, that we are stronger together. And we do have more in common with each other than the politicians and the media probably want us to believe, right? Because they get their power, right? The people that want to maintain the status quo, they get their power by keeping us divided, and they get their power by keeping us discouraged. So we need to be intentional about fighting back against that for the good of everybody's future.
That's phenomenal. And that's something we all talk about on here every single time in our personal lives on here, being intentional. It's super important. We coming together, working together, having that purpose. It applies everywhere, right? I'm glad you said that. It's one of my favorite words. Having you on here right now, we want you to brag a little bit, right? We want to hear about some cool stuff. I think I can speak for all three of us when we say our experience with politics is pretty minimal. So for you, what is your win? Like you've had a career, been through the ACLU, done all kinds of cool stuff. You've been elected to office multiple times. Like, those are some, man, that's huge. That's huge wins to me, right? For you, like, looking back up until today, what's your number one moment? What's your like, this is my aha.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the moment I was most proud of here at the Capitol had to do with reproductive rights, but it was more than reproductive rights. It was an issue of using my voice to express the outrage that so many people in the community were feeling about politics and the democratic process in general. So here's what happened. Last year, a Supreme Court decision here at the state level reinstated a total abortion ban from 1864, before Arizona was even a state. So regardless of how one might feel about this very personal and often divisive issue, this was before we were a state that said, you know, no matter if you were a victim of rape or incest, you had absolutely no choice about what happened to your body. We knew that there were a lot of Arizonans, including Republicans, who were outraged by this law. And we brought a motion to the floor to overturn the law. And there were some folks that had outwardly told the media that they disagreed with this abortion ban, who voted to uphold the abortion ban. So they went against their word, right? Which, again, regardless of party, regardless of how you feel, we really shouldn't be going against our word as politicians. That's the one thing you have, is your word. And they voted to block our attempt to overturn this ban. At that moment, I stood up on the House floor and I shouted, "Shame on you, shame on you." That moment went national because you don't often see politicians shouting on the House floor. But all I could think about in that moment was one of my good friends who was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and she called me that morning and she said, "This abortion ban means that if something goes wrong in my pregnancy, the Supreme Court has just signed off on my death warrant." And I still get chills thinking about that phone call. And I knew there were so many people who felt like how we were acting as politicians in that moment was shameful and it deserved to be called out. That moment made the front page of the newspaper. I was hit with an ethics complaint by my colleagues who said that I was acting unprofessional and not with decorum of a lawmaker. But 3 weeks later, guess what happened? We overturned that abortion ban. We overturned this ban that everyone told us we couldn't do, because that moment that I yelled on the House floor, there were so many people, again, Republican, Democrat, Independent, who said, "Thank you. Thank you for doing that," because this law was so outrageous and so extreme that we could not let this stand. So I think that that's my proudest moment for a couple of reasons. Yes, I care deeply about the issue of reproductive freedom and people being able to choose for themselves when they want to become a parent. But also, people are tired of politicians just going about business as normal. People feel the crisis and the urgency that we're in this moment, not with just this issue, right? There's all kinds of issues that you turn on the news and you're like, oh my gosh, like what bad headline is coming next? And how are politicians just sitting there, just going about their business as usual and collecting a paycheck? So it has been and will continue to be my commitment to my constituents that I will be their voice, and that I will fight with everything that I have, even if that means getting an ethics complaint. So, yeah.
Well, you definitely fit in around here then. Just... Wow.
That's
good for you.
Absolutely phenomenal. When an ethics complaint, you get to fly a flag, right?
And still wear the badge of courage.
Yeah, she's definitely getting an Outlaws advocate chart now.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, street credit.
Yeah,
Street
absolutely.
Yeah,
Truth,
I love that.
you got to stand up for the stuff you believe in, man. That's awesome. Jeremy, you had something, right?
Yeah, Senator Ortiz, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, building policy from the ground up, right? We know those things like take serious time. In your opinion, what is the most urgent policy change Arizona needs right now?
Oh my
And how do you
gosh.
plan to make it a reality? Like, what is the one you have something that's there and it probably eats you at least daily. What do we need and how do we get there?
It's honestly so hard to choose one thing because there is a lot that needs to be changed in the state. I think the one that does weigh on me is our water crisis. I was just down in Yuma County, where I don't know if folks know this, but Yuma is the lettuce capital of the world, where more than 90% of leafy greens consumed in all of North America throughout the months of, I think it's April to December, comes from Yuma County. So water is incredibly important to the farmers down there, but also just to, our economy, our way of life, and just being able to live here in the state where I was born and raised that I love so much, right? And we're currently renegotiating the contract for our water use from the Colorado River, which we share with a bunch of our surrounding states as well as the indigenous tribes. And so here in Arizona, we do not have the regulations on groundwater that we really should to be able to conserve our water sources and make sure that Arizonans and local farmers can have the water they need to sustain their lives and their livelihoods. And this has been an ongoing battle down at the Capitol where Republicans and Democrats just are at each other's heads about it. And we've been unable to find a bipartisan compromise. And it's terrifying because water is life. We cannot sustain our state without it. And I have only moved from Arizona once. I never want to move again. I love this state. I want to die here. I want my nieces and my nephew to be able to grow up and live here forever and have children if they choose here in Arizona. And so we have to get our water situation figured out. This year, I plan to, work with our Republican colleagues to try to find a compromise. I know the governor is prioritizing this issue as well, but we've waited far too long. This is something we should have had better regulated 10, 20 years ago. So that I think if we get anything done this legislative session, a bipartisan agreement on water regulations is going to be number one.
Yeah, I mean, without water, you can't live, you can't build, you can't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's funny, we don't think about it, right? It's something we just subconsciously drink water, and it seems to be one of the biggest concerns in our state. I was unaware.
Yeah, we take it for granted. That's for sure.
Me too. Just to break this up a little bit. What's your favorite fun thing to do? What do you do for fun?
Yeah.
I really like to hike, and I love that we have so many beautiful hiking trails here in Arizona. So I just did the Jewel of the Creek hike, which is up in the Queen Creek area with my dad around Christmas break. That was really, really nice. That's number one for me.
Have you been to Tunnel Bridge by chance?
No, I need to go. Is that near Sedona?
It's up by, I think,
Payson. Yeah,
Payson.
the best time to go is coming into the spring when the walls of the canyon are all very green.
Okay.
I used to swim down at the watering hole. When I was a kid during the summer, I couldn't be left alone because of trouble. So I was in these things called adventure camps, where you get out in a van with a bunch of other kids that are probably not so behaviorally really good. And we would actually go there. It was one of my favorite places to go as a kid, and they have a lot of really good hiking trails. It's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, thank you for telling me. I will
if you
check
go
that
in the
out.
fall, everything is like really kind of dreary because it's just, because the green is gone. But yeah, in the summer, coming into the summer, it's really nice.
Nice. Good to know. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny. That's one of the memories I have with my mom is, the time that we used to spend together was she'd always drag me out for a hike, and my mom is in phenomenal shape, and she always wants to do those 6, 7, 8, 9 mile hikes. And it's like, Mom, can we just do a 2 mile hike? No, that's not enough. It's like, yeah, it is. Yeah, she likes those long hikes. That's for sure.
That's
So-
so great. That's a little much for me. 6 to 9 miles. I don't know if I could last.
She probably does
Him-
4 days a week.
so
Yeah.
you're from Glendale. Are you a Cardinal fan?
I am a Cardinals fan. I'm not a crazy sports person.
Well, could you
But-
legislatively vote to get us a new quarterback?
We should do that. We should mandate that as a state that we got to be doing better.
All right,
So great.
Elise Ortiz, I got something for you. So if say somebody wanted to get involved in politics, maybe they don't know how to start, they don't know where to start, maybe they're a felon, maybe they're a young person, maybe they don't know what they can and can't do. What are some different ways somebody can start getting involved in that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first, you should know who your legislator is. So if you go to the website azleg.gov/find my legislator, you can type that in and it will ask you for your address and it will tell you who your legislators are. Every district in Arizona has 2 representatives and 1 senator. So I would really encourage people to learn who your legislator is and shoot them an email. You can find all of our emails on that website and let them know what issues are important to you. The second thing I would recommend is doing some research on local community organizations. There are a lot of organizations that specifically do work down at the state capitol and help to make it more accessible to come down here during hearings and give testimony. And there's a lot of organizations just related to what issues you care about most. So if you do care about criminal justice reform, ACLU of Arizona does some great work. You could also find organizations that do economic justice work, like organizations that are trying to increase wages and bring better job opportunities. One that comes to mind is called Lucha Arizona, Living United for Change in Arizona. There's another group called Chispa Arizona, which focuses on environmental justice, protecting our public lands, conserving water. And the other group that comes to mind is Save Our Schools Arizona, which does a lot of work around public education. So follow them on social media, join their newsletters, and they will alert you when there are big things going on down here at the Capitol. The legislative session typically runs from about January to June. And as legislators, we're here 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. So if you have the time to come down to the Capitol during business hours, it's here in Phoenix, 1700 West Washington Street. Come down, sit in on a committee hearing or 2 and see what piques your interest. And you will meet people that are also members of the community. And, maybe you might find somebody that you have common ground with. One time when we were down here for the ACLU Smart Justice campaign, there happened to be a MAGA rally going on at the same time. And people were wearing the Make America Great Again hats. And this woman came up to my buddy Khalil, who I know, most of you know Khalil.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what are you guys here for? And he's like, criminal justice reform. What are you here for? And she was like, I don't even remember what she said, something MAGA related. And she's like, well, you know what? I do think our criminal justice system is pretty backwards. I think that people shouldn't be locked up so long. I think that this, and that. And Khalil was like, well, it looks like we agree on criminal justice. And these are 2 people who otherwise might have never talked to each other, who realized that they cared about the same issue, and they were both here at the legislature and could both make their voices heard about a particular bill that was moving related to criminal justice. So you never know who you'll meet or what will be going on or what protest you'll stumble upon when you're here at the Capitol. But if folks have the ability to come down, I highly recommend it. It's an interesting place. And more important than anything, it is your state capitol. It is your House of Representatives, your state Senate. Your tax dollars pay for these buildings. They pay our salaries. You have a rightful place and a rightful home here.
That's right.
That's phenomenal. And it's amazing too, just like you said, by appearance, the MAGA hat and well, we know Khalil, but without that conversation, without asking somebody, hey, what are you doing? What are you here for? And then listening to that feedback, amazing things come from that,
Yeah.
right? From simple communication. And we talk about effective communication. there can be a huge gap when it gets into the legislature, when it gets into pretty much anywhere in the community. People seem to have lost the ability to communicate. People are scared of having a difficult conversation. People are they're not engaging, from what I see, like we used to.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just got to have that conversation, ask people what's going on, get a little bit of perspective. You never know what somebody else is going through, what they've been through, or where they intend to go until you have that conversation.
That's exactly right.
That's why we do this, right? That's why we're in the streets advocating, we're at work advocating, at nights. Just tonight, for example, Tuesday night, if you guys don't know, Eris Foundation, they do an awesome event in Tempe at, it's either 1408 or 1480 East Broadway at the Mountain Park Medical Center. And they do a huge feeding of people that are unsheltered. It's like 500 people. And we go over there every Tuesday, and there's a whole bunch of people that don't have anything in common, but they're all getting along and talking to one another and seeing how they can help each other. So
Great.
Thank you for pointing that out. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Senator Ortiz, when I last saw you, we were at Khalil's event, and there was an attorney that spoke on that housing is healthcare, right? And what we have found working in recovery is that when individuals are giving the right environment that is conducive to treatment, we have found there to be really, really good outcomes. And we noticed that, this post access, fraud, waste, and sober living crisis, it's really put an astringent hold on there's this gray area that, integrated clinics seem to ride in, to promote housing without saying, obviously, we don't want to incentivize them, but we already know, these are the environments that they can thrive in. Half of them can't even put a puzzle together their first 30 days of treatment. So how can a provider even say, hey, you're accumulating costs here as your rent's not taken care of, even though we know you don't know your own name, so to speak, right? What advancements have been made in regards to, I noticed when an attorney says that housing is healthcare, there's got to be some kind of movement here. Is there any movement in that space, or is it legislatively talked about? Fill me in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I believe Access made a change late last year related to allowing some Access patients to use the funding that they get for healthcare towards a housing payment. It's a very limited amount of the population, but that is one step that Access took themselves that was really critical to making sure people can meet their rent. And as you said, see the roof over their head as a condition of their healthcare and making sure that they have adequate healthcare. So that was a positive development that came directly from Access themselves. When it comes to legislation that we could pass, I absolutely think we need to be funding behavioral health homes and housing in general at a higher rate, and providing better pay rates for those who staff behavioral health homes, which is not something that we're seeing. We haven't seen pay increases for those folks in a long time. So all of those are factors that play into this issue. And then lastly, having eviction prevention measures is hugely important. We are one of the few states that doesn't fund legal aid at all from our state budget. So when people are hit with an eviction notice, they have no attorney, no representation. Very rarely can they find pro bono legal assistance to help them through that process. And that's the last thing somebody wants to think about if they are already dealing with other mental health issues or other health issues in general when they're hit with an eviction notice. So we need to be implementing those eviction prevention measures, helping with rental assistance, so that this housing, it doesn't become another barrier for folks who already might struggle with health issues or even with basic access to healthcare.
Yeah, and weren't we like third on the list in the United States for evictions recently?
I
Was
didn't
it?
see that stat, but we did have Maricopa County hit an all-time high in December for our eviction rates. And my district in West Phoenix, South Glendale has the zip codes with some of the highest eviction rates in the entire county. So
Yeah.
it's something that my community is being hit really, really hard with. It's horrible.
Again, there's a lot of growth in a lot of areas that need improvement, right? And thankfully, we have someone like you with a fresh state of mind, a penchant for getting results and having these tough conversations, meeting with everybody. I mean, if you meet with people like us, you're meeting with everybody. So that's pretty awesome.
Y'all are my favorite people to meet with. I would much rather meet with you than some of the lobbyists down here. I'll tell you that.
Well, I believe that like
appreciate it.
George and like Jesse, when George posted that thing on LinkedIn, I was one of those ones where, the 45 cents really didn't matter, right? It didn't matter then, and it doesn't matter now, right? I mean, that's how much they would pay us to provide a service to our community. We can tell just in your tone and your passion that you are purpose driven, and that you are in it for the right reasons, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you as well.
Absolutely.
So how can us
as we-
three, I'm sorry, go ahead, George.
I was just saying, as we wrap up here, we kind of like to do a final thought. So you're just probably getting this information for the first time. So I'll kick it off. I'll pass it to my co-host here, and then you can bring us in with your final thought. Is that
Okay.
awesome? So for me, this is just refreshing. Talking to you every time I see you, knowing someone like you's in a leadership, in a powerful position, and fighting the good fight, fighting for the right reasons, putting ownership back in the hands of your community. You see, every time I talk to you, you make it a point to say, "Hey, I work for you. I work for the people." That's my that's why I was elected, right? And it's so awesome to hear just what you bring to the table and your open-mindedness and whatever got you to where you are today. I'm extremely grateful to have met you and to know you're out there doing the work every day. So thank you, Senator Ortiz. Jesse?
Absolutely. Senator Ortiz, thank you again for coming on. One of the things that really stood out to me is when I was listening to you speak, you made me feel like you think of people as people. And that's important to me, because I don't think that there's too many families around that haven't experienced a family member with addiction, or a family member of somebody that's gone to prison, or a friend of the family that's gone to prison or experienced addiction. It's all over the place. And for a lot of my life, I've been a victim to that, spent most of my life in and out of prison. I caught my number at 18 years old. And I always felt like I was less than, and that I was judged. And I felt like I was nothing and like I had no value. And it's hard to recover, and it's hard to get better when you feel like everybody thinks that you're less than or nothing because of the choices that you've made. And when I was listening to you speak, it just made me feel like you look at us as people. And to me, that's extremely valuable, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Ortiz. Highlighting everything that I feel like I've already said it. Your passion and your purpose is prevalent, and people is people. That hands-on, community first approach. I'm first to say it, and I'll speak for them. In your district, in your schools, if you need us to come out and provide any additional support for any after-school programs or anything that you have, or if you hear something from one of your school districts, we were happy to go and be of support in your community. Please let us know. Okay. And we'll try and get you out a shirt as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you so much, Jesse, Jeremy, and George. It's been such an honor to be here with you. And I thank you for your kind words. That's just so kind of you. But I think it's important to recognize that y'all are the ones doing the actual real work on the ground. And it's so important. And I believe so much in that peer-to-peer support model. I think y'all are demonstrating what that looks like in action when it's successful. And more folks should be replicating what you all have been able to do in terms of reaching out and making sure that folks have the support they need to come home and be successful and to make that transition as smooth as possible. I know it's not easy, but all of you are an inspiration to me and to others that you work with and that you help. So I think this is, the first of many conversations I will continue to have, but also I hope we can do more public facing events together because there's a lot of folks out there that want to be involved in this work, but they don't know how to tap in. And so I hope for those who are listening that you learned something new today so you can get more involved, but also that we can continue to go out and actively find those folks and grow this movement to make some good things happen over the years, because I just feel very hopeful talking to you all.
Unbelievably awesome. I'm a pretty motivated guy, but now I'm even more motivated to hear that last final thought from you. That's phenomenal. Thank you for the buy-in. Thank you for caring. And Jesse and Jeremy both touched on it. You meet people where they're at. You talk to people, and it's extremely refreshing. Extremely. And the reentry thing, you kind of said, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot of stuff. We've had a lot of L's, a lot of losses. Things have been tough, but building our lives back, something I know the three of us, we talk pretty often, believe it or not, just not on a podcast. And we get to share that with each other. And it's just people that are in our positions tend to look at things like, oh, this is hard or this is difficult. Well, being an addict was pretty hard too. It takes about 30% of the effort that I put into staying high and in addiction and in prison. It takes about 30% of that effort to be happy and successful and to get to do cool stuff. Like, I definitely don't have to work as hard on this side of things. So it's really awesome to have you here today. We really appreciate your time, and we thank you very, very much.
Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too.
Oh, hold on. Just 1 second. I'm not going to let this thought go. Can we get a quarterly commitment from you to just kind of touch base?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
And that's even if you become, involved in the presidency. How about that? Wonderful.
Absolutely. You know how to reach me. And I'd love to keep you guys updated, especially as legislation starts to actually move.
Awesome. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
There you are.